All right, so this is part two of the series that I'm doing about the patriarchal. All right, so we talked in the last time about the fact that I compared corporate versus versus patriarchal. And just as a review, we basically saw that in corporate, basically the higher levels feed upon the lower levels. So the idea being that like CEO makes the most money, and he takes up all these people's work so that he can earn more. And of course, he also serves them, right? But and it can be good. You can work for a corporation and be happy, right? But you just accept that the people that are higher up that you get, the more that you're going to receive. Whereas then the other end, you can think of it like this. Okay, so this is a pyramid. Is what I'm trying to make. Okay, and the person at the top makes the most. Now let's turn that around. How do I do that? I'm trying to make a downward pyramid like this. Okay, so that's just the opposite when you think about patriarchal, in the sense that it's like, okay, so here's the father at the bottom. The father is the one that all of the others are resting upon. Okay, so the weight of all of the rest come down upon that one point. And it's like what Christ said when he was here on the earth. He says, I'm the servant of all. Okay, so the idea is that instead, and now like throughout history, we're all reading the words of Jesus Christ, right? And even within the secular world now, there's people who are looking at the words of Jesus Christ, thanks to Jordan Peterson, because you're realizing like this is good stuff. So what's happening? We're feeding upon the words of Jesus Christ. Okay, and so there's one who becomes the servant of all. He's like the CEO who earns nothing. It's like, in fact, he gets as his wages death. Okay, and that's the way like the patriarchs end up in this world. It's like when you have somebody who is a true father, a father of the faith. What often happens is that people hate that individual and they kill him. you know, or they cause them all sorts of trouble. It's like that's why the prophets were going around living in caves and all of this stuff. They became the fathers of their people, the sages, right? They weren't always popular. Okay, so we end up finding that, and this is the case, of course, within a regular family, but spiritually it becomes the same. So that the fathers of nations, the fathers of truth, when truth moves forward, um, they they become this person that everybody looks to spiritually, but they get the least benefit. So it's interesting to look at like the founding fathers of America, that they, when you look at, there was a book put out, The Fate of the Founding Fathers, I think maybe was what it was called, I can't remember, but it talks about how they ended up, they lost, many of them lost everything, and they lost literally family in the war. They also had, their possessions taken. Some of them ended up in prison, um, and just went through terrible hardships, right? Because they were the fathers of something new. Okay, so the patriarchal is something different than corporate. Okay, and when patriarchal goes corrupt, when it becomes corrupt, what happens is you end up with something that looks more like the corporate. So we can see religions that have gone this direction, right? It's like the more corrupt that they become. In the beginning, the founders are usually destitute, living in caves, running from the law, etc., etc. The founders, um, the fathers go through privations, right? And then as time goes forward, the fathers end up, as generation after generation, then you have a situation. I just heard a beautiful quote of it's not Saint Francis, the one that wrote all the books. I can't remember, one of the saints. He's standing before the Pope, and the Pope says to him, he has all this gold and all these things, and he says, he's saying how things have changed since Jesus's time, where Jesus, uh, talked about just the opposite, that it's the opposite. He said, but now the wealth is coming to us, and the saint said to him, he says, yep, and we also no longer could heal the sick or raise the dead. Right, so the power had gone out. Okay, so all right, so the patriarchal, that's the idea, is that it's just the opposite of what we think. Okay, so instead of, it's not the corporate, okay, that's the pyramid, okay, with the person at the top feeding upon the rest. Instead, it's just the opposite. And so, um, okay, I actually think I'm going to make that an episode because I think that was kind of needful. We're at about 5 minutes. And then I'll get into, in the next little section, I'm going to talk about love, and how love is the thing that goes kind of up and down the chain, because when you think about the idea of patriarchal, it is a chain that goes upward and downward. And you can think of that because you can think of, um, you have a father and a mother who had a father and a mother who had a father and a mother. And if you have children, then that will continue from generation to generation to generation to generation. It's an endless chain, an endless chain. It is eternal. All right, so we'll talk about that next time on the next edition. All right, God bless you.